According to the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, the federal debt is on an unsustainable path. The population is growing rapidly and they're living longer. Oh no, and medical spending increases rapidly with age. So, the Social Security and Medicare trust funds, they're going to be depleted by 2035. And retired people, with all their money coming out of taxable IRAs and 401ks, they're going to be sitting ducks for new tax levels. And kinda, that's the good news. What's the bad news? We're living longer. Millions of baby boomers are going to be living into their 90s. So today on Straight Talk Wealth Radio, I'm going to tell you how we plan for our clients living to 100, comfortably and confidently. Wait, how old would Keith Richards be? Hey, welcome to Straight Talk Wealth Radio this week. Last week, I got way into reading reports and stuff like this, even with the coffee stains on it. We got into the peak boomer impact study, and very informative and all that. But a lot of print on the screen. It's like so much you can take on a computer screen. So what we're doing today is we're going to do all graphics. I'm going to take you to the Peter G. Peterson Foundation. I'm going to look at some of their stats on graphics, and then we're going to see what the upcoming challenges are for baby boomers, of which longevity is probably one of the toughest. Because what happens on longevity is that when you have a number of different problems that can occur, whether the market's going to crash, whether inflation is going to take off, whether just institutions will break, whatever there is, the longer you live, the greater the chance that one or more of them will happen. Longevity is probably the greatest risk because it's a multiplier of the other risks in terms of the chances that they will occur during your retirement. So we're going to look at that today, and I'm going to look at how we actually lock longevity out as a risk and actually invest in longevity as an asset class. Interesting concept. You've got your real estate, you've got your stock market, you've got your bond market. And those are all asset classes that go into your little pie chart, and you're very diversified. But do you have assets that invest in your own longevity so that if you have longevity and you keep yourself alive long, you win with it? Any particular asset class that you invest in is always going to be a bet. Large caps. Well, if large caps don't go well, it was a bad bet. If they go well, it was a good bet. Stocks are a great bet if the market goes well and continues to go well. If not, you should have been in bonds. So you invest in bonds, and they're going to be great unless you should have been in stocks. And maybe you shouldn't have been in the market at all. Maybe you should have been in real estate. So real estate will be great as long as real estate is great. See, every asset class is a bet. And when you're doing sound financial planning, you're simply taking the diversification of that you can have, and you're spreading it around enough on the roulette table. So if it comes up red, you got a few chips on red, and your blacks weren't very good. So amongst all of that, and that gets into even doomsday asset classes. Well, the dollar's going to fall apart, and that could happen. Dollar's going to fall apart. Okay, good. So you buy some gold. But if it doesn't happen, or the dollar remains strong, the gold wasn't a good bet. Right now, it's a good bet. There's been times in my career it wasn't a good bet. So anywhere you go in an asset class, the name of the game is to diversify throughout your asset classes. So whatever the scenario is, you've got at least something winning if something else isn't. Well, what we're going to propose today is that your own longevity is an asset class. Your own longevity is something you should invest in. If you don't live long, what a great investment. But if you live long, it may well beat all your other investments. And I'm going to show you how to make sure that if that happens, it's not a maybe anymore. Like you're betting on your longevity. It is uncorrelated to every other asset class. All you have to do is live long, and you will have one of the best investments you ever had, guaranteed. Guaranteed. So that's what we're going to talk about today on Straight Talk Wealth Radio. But what I want to go into right now is I want to go into the scenario we're leading into with the baby boom generation and the challenge of retiring into the 2020s. So we're going to go to the Peter G. Peterson Foundation. That was funded by the old Commerce Secretary. I think it was under Clinton, Peter G. Peterson. But he has conglomerated or accumulated conservatives, liberals, anyone who's concerned about the fiscal health of the government works with the Peter G. Peterson Foundation in harmony with them, because that's their whole topic. Very apolitical in terms of which party, but all about the fiscal soundness of the government. So here's their site at pgpf.org. Okay, so they have a lot of specialized charts. Again, this is the Resource Center, lots of stuff you can download. I went over to charts, and they had one or two one-offs. I'll put together a complete show on some of these topics: taxes and revenues, retirement security. I went in here. They had some nice stuff, but they have the general. And last week we went over a few of these. I think we went over at least one. I will pull all of these together into a presentation, and we'll go over them soon. But they have their main one, their main chart pack. All right, so this particular set are the selected charts on the long-term fiscal challenges of the United States. So let's go through this and we'll see what pertains to retirement. I tried to thin this out a little bit. So the first thing to know is that the federal debt is on an unsustainable path. So here we have how much borrowing and debt we have had over the years since the beginning of the country. The Civil War was a big, big bump, trying to borrow money and being in debt to pay that war. World War II popped us off. And then we paid a lot of that down. And then in the 1950s to 1976, we came off the gold standard during Nixon. And I don't know how directly related that is, but we started to really decline. Here's the Great Recession in 2000. Is that 2008? I guess that's about 2008 in there. And then we've been out of control ever since. And this is where, unfortunately, where my career as a retirement planner has sat and we've had to deal with. And the characteristic of this, on the one hand, is that markets love how much money the government can just print. And there is an actual economic theory right now that the government can print as much as it wants. It's called modern monetary theory. I think it's garbage, but it is the vogue economic concept and writings. And Stephanie Kelton is sort of the author of this. And it is basically the economic viewpoint of the bureaucrats these days that are spending a lot of money, which is we can print as much as we want. And we can keep doing it as long as we don't have inflation. If we have inflation, get this. The solution to inflation is raise taxes to suck money back out of the economy. And then inflation cools down, and then print more money. And there's no limit to what the debt is. It doesn't matter, because we can have a debt forever, and all we have to do is print money. That's the idea. But we'll take a look at what these charts have to say. Anyway, this is the federal debt on an unsustainable path. And as a percentage of the gross domestic product of the country, we are currently 100%. So the debt equals the full annual production of the United States is the level of our debt right now, 31 trillion or so. And it will be 166% of the annual production of the country by 2054. This shows that our spending continues to outgrow our revenues. That's a problem. I'm going to just brush through these. The interest costs on our debt are going to rise sharply. So as our spending has increased, this is just the interest on the debt. The 10-year interest costs right now are $12.4 trillion just for the interest on the debt. By 2054, interest costs are projected to be nearly 3 times the amount of the federal government has historically spent on research and discovery, infrastructure, and education combined. So take those three things, R&D, infrastructure, education, and the national debt will be 3 times more than what we spend on that by 2054. U.S. has spent more on interest costs than any other national priority. This is how much we spend on the interest on the debt. This is how much we spend on education. This is how much on veterans benefits, transportation, administration of justice, natural resources, and environment. We're spending it all on our borrowed money and little on our immediate interests. All right, spending for Social Security and Medicare will continue to climb. Social Security and Medicare are going to keep climbing. That's the blue line combined. All other non-interest spending, we are trying to at least hold or decline if we can. And the interest is soon approaching where the interest payments on the debt will outspend Social Security and Medicare, which is the safety net for a huge population that is aging. Here we go. The elderly population is growing rapidly and living longer. So 2013 has how many baby boomers turned 65 between 2013 and looks like 2030 or so. Medical spending increases rapidly with age. So the average 45 to 64-year-old spends about $12,500 a year on health. 65 to 84, $20,000 a year. 85-year-olds plus 35,000. Now that doesn't include like the government spending. That's just like their spending. But man, you know, I had a hernia operation this last year. Oh, I'm getting private. I'm an open book. But that was, what was that? I think it was $100,000 operation in my mid 60s. Yeah, I didn't pay for it. I probably spend $12,000 a year on Medicare, medical expenses. The government's paying the rest. So how this relates, it just relates to a pressure you're going to have on your retirement spending. Healthcare costs in the US have increased drastically over the past decade. So each decade we wind up as a country spending more. US per capita healthcare is $12,500, twice the average of other wealthy countries. As the population ages, fewer workers will be paying taxes to support each Social Security beneficiary. So in 1964, 4 people were working for every 1 person taking a benefit from Social Security. 2004, 3.3 were working for every 1 taking a benefit. Currently in 2024, 2.7 people are working for every 1 person taking a benefit. We are almost going to where there's 2 people working and 1 person retired through the whole country trying to support Social Security. This is why it's called a Ponzi scheme. If you don't have new people coming in the front of it, the people at the top eventually don't get their promised money. So Security thereby is facing a significant cash shortfall by 2035. The combined trust funds will be depleted for Social Security and Medicare by 2035. Great charts. Again, just want to sample what you can get out of the Peter G. Peterson Foundation. Low-income seniors rely on Social Security benefits for a major share of their retirement income. So the lowest quintile of seniors, 81% of them, let's see, Social Security benefit, total of income. All right. So if they're making $13,500 as their income, which is pretty bad, 81% of their income is Social Security. They're making between $13,500 and $23,500. 81% of their income is Social Security. When they get a little bit up there, 61%. Even between up to people making up to $72,000 a year, 39% of their income now is Social Security. And don't forget, as we just saw, by 2030 or whatever that date was, they're going to have to reduce benefits by 25% to keep it solvent whatsoever. All right. Federal government collects revenues from a variety of sources. Yes, individual income is 50% of how the government collects its revenues. And the tax system is just out of control, what they're saying here. Top 1% of taxpayers generate 24% of total tax revenues. Now, I will say this, Part of this talk is geared to people that are not in those tax brackets and what they're going to have to deal with. But if you are in that top tax bracket, you're a whole different client for us. And we do deal with this. Tax planning is looking ahead and making sure you are structured in a way that you are legally paying the least amount of taxes. You can't do that through your CPA if he's backwards looking and you just give him the data at the end of the year and expect them to come up with a plan. They are backwards looking. Their job is to take what you've done and tell you what you owe. We do tax planning, and typically you're working with us a year or more before you feel the results because we're working structures. We have a whole team of people. I'll tell you at the end of today's show how we work on that. Also, while I'm mentioning it, there will be some giveaways at the end of the show that are really, really important. We're going to offer you a free retirement roadmap that takes all of this into consideration. There's a free report that I wrote we're going to touch on called Principal Spend Down, a Slippery Slope in Retirement. Talks about what happens once your interest and dividends can no longer support your retirement income and you have to start touching principal. That gets to be a rapidly slippery sliding slope. And I wrote a whole report on it, very illustrated, which I'm going to show you some portions of here. I'm going to tell you solutions on this in a minute. I know I'm going over the problems. Give me 2-3 minutes here. We'll be done with the problems. I'm going to tell you about how we solve this. So I have created lots of different slideshows over the years. And sometimes now I just kind of go through and pull. When I want to make a point to you and make a graphic, I pull these together. So some of this is from the slideshow I did a while ago called Strategies for World Turned Upside Down. I took the key portions of it. I want to help you understand how to navigate these waters. Part one was, what are we looking at? Let's go to part two, which is, what do we do about it? So what we do is we get our clicker here. There we go. So let's take a look at the world that we're going to live in probably sooner than you think. What's different about it? And some of these slides are old, but they've held up over the years, so it could be updated. But we're going to have the economics of global debt. This world has been living on debt like never before. That's different than it used to be a generation ago. Boomer demographics are going to strain the government endowments, as we've just seen. So Social Security and Medicare, we're going to wonder if they're actually going to pay what they've promised. We've had globalization. Right now we're in the throes of the battle between deglobalizing and reglobalizing. That has affected really the ability of central banks to print money, stimulate economies. And really what we're dealing with here is, if you are pushing globalization, you're pushing power to those banks, and you're giving them the ability to do what they think is best for economies. When you're unglobalizing or you're decoupling from that, you're kind of letting things happen a little bit more, for lack of a better word, libertarian, a little bit more free market. And if markets crash, we're not printing money necessarily to get out of it. So that's part of the globalization story. We've got improvements in longevity, so that's different. People are living longer. There are health improvements. What's the same? What's the same? What's going to be the same as it's always been? Well, we're going to have hopes and dreams for golden years. We all want to enjoy those years. We're going to need passive income needs. We're going to have needs for passive income coming to us while we're not working. That is a universal theme. Now, some of us, we're going to have to work because we didn't plan for it. We didn't get to this point. But if you are going to retire or think about it, that does come down, no matter what, to some sort of passive income needs that you're going to need to fulfill while you're not working. That means assets that you may have accumulated. If you, in your accumulation years, you've acquired assets, those are going to shift to income. So I don't care what you've got for assets, whether it's your real estate, whether it's your gold bars, whether it's your stocks, somehow you're going to have to shave a sliver of that gold bar off and turn it into a way to buy bread. Or your income is going to have to pay you some sort of dollars so that you actually have assets that become income. There you go. Got to pay the bills. So that involves the retirement income management process. So The asset management is what you're used to. You're used to having asset classes and bets in certain ways to grow the asset base. But when you retire, it changes to an income management process, new kind of wealth management with a purpose. So the retirement income management process has a few steps to it. The first step is purpose, envisioning. What makes you happy is really what kind of retirement are you trying to retire into? That's really what it is. It's definition of the retirement you're trying to provide for. The second step is to just identify today's risks, right? Like, and I think we are a little bit more centric on this than a lot of money managers. There are people that are out there like, look, this is just what's always been. It's how it's been. These are the tried and true rules. Just do all of this and it will be no different tomorrow. We think there's certain risks today that could be game changers. So we work very hard to try to identify the specific risks. But if you do identify them specifically, then you can solve them specifically and address them specifically. Instead of this, and we're going to do this in the slideshow here, so hang on a minute. Then you look at the solutions, specific solutions to specific risks, and you start to hammer those out one by one in the way your portfolio is constructed. And then you study the feasibility of it. You look at future projections, what that means. Now, we do a retirement roadmap, and we do that almost every year with each of our clients. And the retirement roadmap is just a visual study. I'm going to show you one at the end of this that just helps with feasibility and always looking at changing out the numbers and forward looking and seeing, are we on the right path, etc. That's feasibility. Those are the main risks. I wrote a report several years ago called Inflation or Deflation, America's Monetary System in Crisis and How to Plan for It. And this list of 5 risks was embedded in that report. It says you could buy all the stocks and mutual funds you want in the 2010s and 2020s. Buy all the best foreclosure real estate, which was going on back then after the great bubble. Stock up with piles and piles of all the gold and silver you want. And tell you, if you call this shot wrong, inflation or deflation, your plans could all be for naught. We were looking at that. Which way are we going? And even today we have stagflation. It's a combination of both. And by the way, if you didn't notice, we will put a link down below. All the goodies that I'm giving you today are in links below. If you're watching this on YouTube, check the show notes. If you're watching this on website, on our website, we will also have show notes. Look on Facebook. I think if you're watching on Facebook, we'll have some place to put the links. We can give you a link to this report as well as, link to this report as well as some other goodies. All right, Bruce Weide said that. So in that report, I had a section here on the 5 greatest risks that I isolated. So there are 12 textbook risks to any management scenario, but I isolated 5 here that are particular challenges to baby boom retirement. So let's take a look at them. Number 1, market risk. The American, if not the global economy, will be frail, and the stock market will be extremely volatile. That continues to happen because we've got the money printing, because we keep trying to iron out risk in the market, but we create more risk when we print money, and then we try to figure out where it's all going when the money printing stops. And we didn't have to stop. We could go forever until now we've hit inflation. And now we've got some trouble because the Fed's trying to cool that down and stop printing money, but we're wondering what's going to happen to all the stuff that used to depend on printing. So we still have a volatile market for starters. 2, tax risk. Historical increases in tax rates on businesses, working people, and retirees, with both state and federal government getting ever more ingenious about inventing new ways to collect tax revenue. That's going to be going on. This is for boomers and Gen Xers. Monetary risk. There's a serious possibility of hyperinflation or deflation. Which one? Call it wrong and you can lose everything you've built. How about that? I wrote this when we were having deflation. Now we're having inflation. You've got to understand both sides of that coin and work accordingly. We are currently in a stagflationary period. That means that money is becoming worth less and consumer costs are going up. And yet the Fed, in trying to slam it back down, is putting us at risk. Housing is cooling, maybe reducing. So you're looking at certain consumer costs increasing where money's becoming worth less Yet you try to go into holding assets, the traditional assets, and they're at the risk of crashing. That's stagflation. It's your dollars becoming less value and there's nowhere to invest because assets can be falling as well. That's stagflation. Okay, longevity risk. Human lifespan continues to increase with modern medicine. Therein lies a serious threat that a retiree could outlive their source of retirement funds if they live too long. We're going to be talking more about that in a minute. And number 5, health event risk. For those that have meager retirement assets and have not otherwise provided for assistance with their activities of daily living, should they one day require such help, the skyrocketing cost of care could deplete despite their entire asset base, could deplete their entire asset base in a single average incident. This is a whole chapter we're going to do sometime, which is go into this sort of long-term care scene. I will tell you the story of my mom. My mom needed long-term care for 14 years, couldn't care for herself, cost the family estate about $1.5 million. And there's a saying, we spend our health to gain our wealth, so at the end, we can spend our wealth to keep our health. Definitely a scene that goes along with longevity in this country. So I want to talk about longevity risk. It's how long a portfolio can last. And longevity plan on spending 25 to 30 years in retirement. So what you have here is your lifespan after you've hit age 65. So, there's the whole, what's the general mortality of the population? But when you do that, you have to start with people that are babies and teenagers off themselves a little too much. So that's a difficult time to get through. But once you're 65 years old, you have a 56% chance of living to age 83. You still have a 31% chance of living to age 89. And mind you, these stats were from 2005. I think they've improved. I think they've improved greatly since 05. And now you still have a 14% chance of living to age 94. I think a more recent stat I saw is if a couple both reached age 65, there was something like close to a 50% chance that one of them at least was going to live into their 90s. That's longevity. All right, we're going to talk about the rule, the 4% rule here. And I'm going to play a little video. This video is outdated, but it's well explanatory about how the 4% rule works. So let's take a look here. And hopefully my sound is working out. But I'm going to let this gentleman explain it because I'm already winded. Oh, where'd he go? There he is.
The 4% rule is a rule of thumb that was developed to tell retirees how much they can safely spend each year in retirement. People have a tendency to use what's simple, and the 4% rule is simple, and that's the best thing about it. It's an easy thing to be able to grab onto. You could start with $1 million, spend $40,000 in the first year, and increase that at the rate of inflation, say 3% every year, and reliably never outlive your savings. Today, the 4% rule is broken. It doesn't work anymore because interest rates aren't what they were. With interest rates today at 0% on a 3-month treasury and 2% on a 5-year treasury, the 4% rule hasn't held up. About a third of people.
Okay, let's look at that for a second. Outdated. Now, what we recommend for longevity investment, even a better deal than it was back then. We are basically looking at uncorrelating from stocks, real estate, most of the asset classes, and just investing in longevity. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But by doing this, you can beat the 4% rule. If you invest in longevity, I'm going to show you an illustration I have where I've got the client somewhere around 7, 8, or 9% guaranteed withdrawals from their retirement fund. Totally sustainable. But we'll come back to that in a minute. But this is outdated. He's talking about these really low interest rates. Our solutions have only gotten better because interest rates have come up. So as challenging as this is in the video, we're doing even better today.
Over the last 20 years have failed to save enough and to have enough for retirement when they've been sticking to the 4% rule. That's a terrible situation to be in, to outlive your savings. The flat 4% rule doesn't take into account if you have a big medical expense early in your retirement and then really need to adjust how much you spend every year. Today, what's called for is a more dynamic approach, where your savings and the amount you can spend is adjusted dynamically each month in response to market conditions. If you sat down with a financial advisor.
Now, he's going to show you a bogus solution here, which means, well, some years you'll just have to spend less. That's not always possible to do. Just get used to it. Some years you'll spend more, some you get less, because your portfolio is going to go up and down. We decouple from the portfolio to solve this. So we're not having fluctuations in our income depending on the current interest rates or how the market's doing or whether our investments are up or down, which is what he's kind of saying here. I'm giving you a disclaimer. This is bogus.
Every year, look at your current savings, look at your lifestyle, and let you know how much it's safe to spend that year.
So, and I just want to put this into perspective. 1994, William Bengen, based on certain interest rates at the time, which had fallen greatly since October 94, but looking at a 50% portfolio of bonds and stocks, decided that when you retire at 65 and you want that portfolio to last 30 some odd years, start with 4%. So you got $1 million, $40,000 is what you get out. That's it. You can increase it a little bit for inflation every year, but just stick with that number. Start with 4%, increase it by maybe 3% inflation a year, and hopefully your portfolio will last you for a 35-year retirement. By January 2013, interest rates had dropped so low that Morningstar said, you shouldn't take more than 2.8%. How would you like to have $1 million retirement fund to find out that you can't touch more than $28,000 a year coming out of it with a little inflation attached? Wall Street Journal said in 2013, you better make it 2%. And somebody here in October 2015, when interest rates are really at their bottom, was coming up with 1.49. Pretty radical, okay? I'm going to show you much better, and I'll show you how. This is just what one of these plans look like. And this is just where you get guaranteed income and how you beat the 4% rule. So what you have here is you have a $350,000 premium that we put into the plan. Okay. Now, we waited a few years on this. We waited till the end of 4 years. In the 5th year, we started drawing money out. These are fully guaranteed amounts right now. If interest rates fall, we won't be able to do as well. This is the time to be looking at these. But for $350,000, this was guaranteed. First of all, they got a 25% bonus on this. I think this is the one that had a 25% bonus. Yep. And then it was guaranteed to grow by 7% a year. So by the end of the 4th year, the base of this policy, of this contract, was up to guaranteed to be at $573,000 from the $350,000 that was put in. That included a $25,000 bonus, 25% bonus, and 7% growth per year. At that point, 573, 473 at the end of 4 years, starting next year, the guaranteed payout rate was 7%. I'm going to show you why they do this, why we don't have to use the 4% rule here. 7%. That meant the client was guaranteed a $44,000, $157 per year payout for the rest of their life. Here you see they started that at age 73, and at age 100, they're still taking it. Now, what's happened is their real money inside of this stopped in year 15 at age 84. There was no money left. Look, the insurance company is figuring that this person's probably going to live to 85 or 86. They had use of their $350,000 for 15, 16 years. And do the tricks that insurance companies do with it. But it's an insurance against longevity. If they pass away at the expected age, The insurance company's going to, ha ha ha, there was $10 left in your account the day that you die. All we did is we took your money in, we gave it back to you, and you died. Because we know when people die. But if you're beating longevity, if you're playing the longevity asset, you can't look. Okay, right here, this person has collected. They started in year 5, and their money ran out in let's call it year 15. At that point, they've put 350,000 in. They've taken 440,000 out, and they are, what age are they here? 83. If they lived to 93, 20 years in this, they would have taken $880,000 out against the 350, and it's fully guaranteed. It's not, all they have to do is live. All they have to do is stay alive. This is investment in a longevity asset class. This is how you make longevity work for you instead of working against you. On that note, what we do, it looks like this. We do this for no charge, no obligation. We call it our retirement roadmap. This is where we put all the asset classes together. This is where we look at, what do we think your regular portfolio, your growth portfolio is going to earn? How much inflation do we want to put to your retirement income needs? How much do we want to put in a guaranteed income source that bets on your longevity? You can't get these things by shopping shiny objects off a shelf. You have to sit down and do a study. Ours is detailed. It's always an epiphany for people. Just to get the study done, it's an epiphany. And we do this for no charge or no obligation. There'll be a link below to get your retirement income study. And what you're really doing is you're creating a strategic scenario. You're creating a scenario where you're looking at the big picture so you can decide what smaller decisions you need to make within that. That's the purpose of this. So retirement income plan helps you determine how much income will you need, where that income is going to come from. What's coming from social, what's coming from the portfolio, what's coming from a guaranteed source of income. If you have any pensions, Social Security, when will you start Social Security, whether or not you should work, how to manage withdrawals for a sustainable lifestyle. Doing this plan, I've had clients that walked away and implemented on their own or implemented with another advisor. I've never had one who didn't think it was an epiphany. And in fact, I have a really good client testimonial on this that we're also going to put a link into, to good old Sean. All we did with Sean is we did this. He had an advisor who would advise him in a very similar manner that we did. So he was kind of taken care of, but he never had the 10,000-foot view on it. So we did that. He had a real nice success story. We'll put that link in below too. This is just a little model of how we work. I don't want to get off in the weeds on it, but all of these issues today require what we are, which is a virtual family office. So we work with other advisors in our network to make sure all bases are covered. So you are the client. We are the proactive planning team. We're the ones who are thinking forward on probably the things that you're not even thinking about. And then we bring together professionals that are tax planning professionals. I'll tell you some story about the couple here, I think, that were real estate investors, $148,000 a year in taxes. We knocked it within a year down. We knocked it down $60,000 with some good planning, and we're going further. Risk mitigation specialists are involved in comprehensive wealth management. Then you just have your good old wealth managers, your money managers. Legal services may be part of it, and business advisory. This is all part of what we call our virtual family office. It is our network of advisors. When we bring people in, we look at all of these things and see that they're all covered. So we're not just different advisors working on different islands that never talk to each other. That's not the way to go. Hey, that ends our slideshow for today. And so look at the links below. Let's do a free retirement roadmap for you and figure out how to put all these risks together. We're looking at identifying the risks and then mitigating them one at a time by understanding what they are. There's several of them. We'll do future shows on more of each of the risks and how to mitigate each one of them. I only looked at a couple things here. But we do a retirement roadmap anytime for free, no obligation. Download the report. Principal spend down, a slippery slope. Realize that it was written in an earlier interest rate environment. It's only better now. Longevity credits, lifetime income.